I I am a big trading card fan. My entry into comic books started with my grandfather reading me stories, but the original first things I ever used to collect were actually baseball cards. That was my big love was actually baseball cards. And then eventually I got to a point with baseball cards, but wasn't really holding my fascination anymore. And I started taking my baseball cards and trading those in order to get comic books. And then I segued over into collecting comic books, which I primarily focused on. But I have enjoyed collecting a lot of the trading cards over the years. Um, and one of my favorite lines of all time, there's two, is the original Impel Marvel Universe trading cards from the 1990s. You got to see some of those pictured right here. And some of my other favorites were actually the Joe Jusko Masterpiece cards, the original ones. Now, something interesting has been going on. I'm gonna show these off here just real briefly, just to kind of give you guys an idea. Lynn is already aware of all this weird fascination I have. Now, I am a big fan sometimes of characters more than necessarily lines. Let me go over here. So one of the things over the years I do is a lot of times I collect characters more than I necessarily collect lines of cards. So I just showing this off. This is an entire page of nothing but Rogue. Okay, I have every single Rogue Marvel card that's ever been produced. Okay, because I'm a huge fan of Rogue. She's one of my favorite characters, actually, in the Marvel universe. Bit of a weird crush thing, but I've always loved this character. And part of the reason I know so much about Captain Marvel is because of her connection, actually, to Miss Marvel and Carol Danvers. That's how I first got into learning about that character. Now, I want to show you here because if you notice, there's like there's a lot of versions on here, but there's a Masterworks on here. There's actually two masterpieces. There's two masterpieces on there. This Rogue card here is the one that we're talking about. This is the line. Now, I have been thinking about actually going back and actually trying to complete a set of the actual masterpieces cards. That's what I had been thinking about doing. So I have been actually watching on eBay because I've also been talking about here on the show of actually going back and actually pressing some comics and starting to actually sell comics on eBay and use that money in order to turn around and buy other comic books with. Now, along those lines, I've been watching the cards. Here's the thing that's been interesting. A lot of these older Marvel cards, specifically the original 1990, this is some more of my cards here. I just wanted to show these off. So a lot of these original Impel cards, they're going up in value astronomically. Now, they do need to be graded. Okay. If they're graded, those cards are actually going up in value. So I wanted to bring this up on the show, number one, because I think these cards are fun. And I'm excited to see people are talking about these cards. But here's what I want to point out, okay? There's a guy just put a video on eBay a couple days ago saying, don't invest in these cards. I'm not saying invest in these cards, okay? Here's what I'm saying to do. I know some of you in this audience watching, Lynn, I'm talking to you because I know you've got some of these cards. Those of us who collected these cards, if you have a connection and a love of these cards, if they're in a storage shed, if they're in an attic, if you love them and you want to take care of them, put them into a climate-controlled environment. Take a look at the condition of some of these cards. Some of them might actually be worth having graded. The Cosmic Spider-Man card, the Black Suit Spider-Man card, the Venom card. A lot of these cards they're actually saying are quote-unquote like Venom's rookie card. Okay, because it's the first trading card, with Venom on them. And these cards are skyrocketing in value. Specifically the Cosmic Spider-Man, a lot of the hologram cards. These cards are selling on eBay right now for anywhere from $800 upwards to a couple $1,000s. If you have a case of these things, these cases of specifically these particular 1990, the first wave of these cards, these cases are going anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000 on eBay. Now, is this a bubble? Is this going to last? Of course it's not going to last, okay? But here's the deal, okay? If you have some of these cards, if you're not attached to them, now is also the time to take them out, get them on eBay, put them on Mercari or Facebook Marketplace or something, mark them up. Now, if you want to get out of these cards, if you have no attachment to them and you want to make some money, now is also the time to maybe sell these cards because there's a lot of attention on them. These cards, go back in time, these cards were essentially worthless. Okay. So if you want to make some money, here's the deal. Find your cards, get the ones that are in good condition, and take a look at trying to sell them, because you can actually make some scratch off of them. If you are a fan of these cards, if you love these cards, they are going to have value after this. I don't think these super high prices are going to last. I think they're going to come down, but some of these cards are going to stay up in value, just like a lot of the older comics. And I think it's going to keep these cards in people's consciousness. And I think these cards are going to be worth a little bit over time. So I think the thing to do is start to take care of them. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you have these cards, you have attachment, take care of them, because I think they might be worth a couple bucks down the road. If you have no attachment to them, find these cards, either get them graded to maximize your value, or number two, throw them on eBay right now and sell them, because you're going to get a higher price for these cards right now than you would have ever had before. But the time to do it is right now. Don't sit on this. So I just wanted to put this out so people are aware that this is happening, because I know a lot of you in this audience that you're into this stuff like we are. You probably have some of these cards. Now is either the time to, number one, reassess them and take better care of them, or number two, sell them and try and make a couple dollars while the attention is on them.
Yeah, along those lines, Lynn says exactly that. Most of my cards are out in the garage. He's definitely going to look. He has no attachment to them, and he's thanks you for the heads up. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted you to talk about this, is because people just aren't aware. And awareness is key. It kind of reminds me in a strange way of the Wall Street bets phenomenon too, because you don't know if this is going to be a bubble. I'm sure it will. I mean, it's just like anything else. Anything when it comes to any commodity, it goes up and it goes down.
Yeah,
and
it's gonna. Yeah, exactly.
So it's just good to be aware of that, and that so that people have some awareness that this is happening, and there's a possibility that maybe they can make a few bucks. You know what I mean? If you can do that, that's awesome. But like you said, it might not be the right time to go out there and go buy these cards, especially since this is a seller's market, right? So that's one thing to also consider. And the other thing I wanted you to talk about was you're going to be going through the grading process, right? You're going to try to find some cards and actually have them graded, which I think is interesting. We've talked about doing that with comics as well, as far as you were looking into actually grading some of your comics, and you made the comment to me off the air that basically it was looking like your cards might actually be more valuable than the comics that you were looking at having graded.
Right. Along those lines, for example, this I just pulled this card out just because it's a bit easier to see. But this is the patch Wolverine card. One of the things they're saying to be careful of is to pay attention to the centering. I hope I don't damage this card doing this. But this card, the centering on the front and the back, it's hard to see, is almost dead on. The corners are real crisp and sharp. The printing is really good. This thing has been in an environmentally and controlled environment. This is actually the first time I've actually touched this card outside of being in the sleeve since I originally got it when I was a child. And a lot of my cards, I was looking at them and inspecting them, and some of the ones that are more rare, like, for example, my Captain Britain card. My Captain Britain card is also in incredibly good shape, and it's pretty much dead on centered. So what I'm going to do is, then the reason I showed this Rogue page to begin with is because for those of you who are into this stuff, I collect more of the characters than the sets. So this entire sheet of Rogue cards is an example of what I'm going to do. Those characters I care about, that I have an attachment with, those cards I'm going to keep. But some of these other cards I don't really have a huge attachment to. If I can flip them and get a couple dollars out of them, now's going to be the time. Now, some people might say, well, Dave, do you really think that you're going to be able to get like a huge dollar amount out of these cards? And my response to that is, I'm not really thinking about it necessarily in those terms. If I can get $20 out of a card or $5 out of a card, I have so many of these cards, that's enough. I can use that to pay down part of the equipment that we're using over here on Kirby Tees. And that's what I'm thinking of. And the irony of it is right now, I feel like now is the time to move on these cards. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying run out and buy a $5,000 box of cards. I'm just saying those of you in this audience who were into this, who already have these cards, I'm telling you, I'm signaling for you. It's like, now is the time. If you're not attached, see what you've got. Look at the prices they're going for. If it's a card that has a high value, if it's a Cosmic Spider-Man, if it's a Venom, Okay, if it's a major character, if it's a Hulk, it's a Thor, it's Spider-Man, it's Wolverine. And like, for example, I have every single one of these cards that's on the screen. These are the cards that you might want to think about having graded because you can get more value out of them. But the trick is, if you don't have an attachment to them, now's the time to sell them. If you love them, now is the time to actually take a look at doing something to preserve them. Because before, we all thought these things were worthless and not worth anything. But I do think as the market goes up and comes down, it is going to go up and it's going to come back down. But when it comes back down, I don't think it's going to hit that rock bottom that everyone's expecting. I think moving forward, because so many of us have so much love for these card sets, because I know I do, that I think these cards, that their value is going to last a little bit over time. Some of these cards are going to be considered a somewhat valuable collectible to those people who are into it. So all I'm saying is, if you've got it in a storage shed or you've got it in a garage or whatever, take it out, find the ones that you're attached to or the ones that you think might be valuable, and maybe secure them in a little bit better, environmentally controlled environment, because over time, even if this bubble bursts, there might be another time a few years from now that you might still be able to get a couple dollars for it. So that's all I'm saying. This is an interesting phenomenon. This has only been happening recently, and I've only been aware of it because, like I said, I was looking to buy some more Masterpiece cards, the original Joe Jusko cards. I'm a huge Joe Jusko fan. I have his entire Tarzan set, for example. I'm a huge Joe Jusko fan. And I was going to go back and pick a lot of those cards up. But I'm just letting everybody know, now's the time. Either sell them or maybe take a look at protecting them.
Now, Danny, who had to leave, he had a question for us. So I want to get to his question. So Danny Digital said, do you think comic collectors will be interested in Marvel trading cards? The funny thing is, Danny, from my perspective, which is totally different than Dave's, as it often is, I didn't collect superhero comic books very much growing up. I collected G.I. Joe and I collected Transformers. And I never got into these cards personally. And I did like trading cards. For instance, I had, Dave and I talked about this off the air. I had some like Star Trek, I think 25th anniversary cards. I had a bunch of those. I think I bought a whole box of them. I did have some baseball cards. I had some Olympic cards. And then I also had Garbage Pail Kids. I think I had a bunch of those. It seemed like everybody did back in that era. So trading, there's two parts of that question, I guess, really, because it becomes like, well, I think there's a lot of cross-pollination between people that like comics and also like trading cards. But I don't know if in general gravitate towards these cards or not. That's the best answer that I can give you. What's your take on that question, David? What do you think?
Well, I do think that for certain fans that it does have a connection and a fascination. And I think for a lot of us, it's an interesting way that we can continue to explore the hobby. So I do think comic book fans would be interested in these cards as they become aware of them, because there are some people that are probably coming into the hobby for comic books right now that maybe didn't even realize that this used to be a thing. And a lot of times people are not aware of things that used to exist. And Eric, this is what I was talking about. I wanted to show these off because this is something I know that would interest you. So this is from the G.I. Joe set that Impel did. This is Flash. This was the first G.I. Joe figure I ever owned. Still one of my favorite G.I. Joes of all time, the Laser Rifle Trooper Flash. But this is a really cool looking card. It's just kind of fun. It's that old school, comic book G.I. Joe style art. And these are really neat. And these are the kind of things that I think some people are not even aware even existed. But I was going to show a couple of these because these are another set of cards that are beginning to actually get a lot of attention. Here's Grunt. This is also from G.I. Joe. And then here's probably one of the most popular characters to ever come out of G.I. Joe. There's Snake Eyes. And that's the thing that's interesting about some of these characters. These are quote unquote, these are their rookie cards. And there's a lot of this stuff that I think a lot of people are going to find interesting. And there's a lot of this stuff out there. But I don't know. But I do believe, in all honesty, Danny, I do believe there are going to be people who are going to be fans and interested in these and love them. I still love them. I mean, I have a whole set of these GI Joe cards. I've got multiple versions. I haven't even talked about the DC cards. I've got almost every DC card that's ever been produced. Plus, I've actually worked on some of the DC cards. I actually worked on several sets actually for Cryptozoic. I've done the official cards actually for Dove, Superboy, you know, and other interesting side characters too. So I have a love and a fascination for these things. I've always loved them. But like I said, this is what, you know, collecting cards, collecting baseball cards is what introduced me into the collecting hobby in general. So maybe it's just a little bit more in my vein. It's a little bit more of my, you know, it's in my veins, you know what I mean, to be into this.
Yeah.
But I do think, as some fans are aware of it, this is an interesting way that people can collect and love these characters. Like, for example, like if you don't have the room to have a several thousand piece collection, you know, my trading card collection takes up a lot less room than my comic book collection does. So I do believe that there is, I think over time, I think fans are going to be interested in this stuff. And I do think these things are going to stay into consciousness. And I do think this is going to introduce a lot of people to the cards. I think that it's, you know, it's that the one thing feeds the other thing phenomenon, right? That kind of idea. But these are really cool. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people are not aware of a lot of these things that exist. This is actually from that too. A lot of these lines, they'll collect like classic covers. So yeah, but these are really cool. And these things are starting to heat up too. So, but like I said, if you don't have an attachment for them, for those of you who already have them, you know, now's the time to maybe take a look at selling them. I just think now's a good time. And if not, now, if you do have an attachment to them, you know, take them out of the garage, take care of them. You know what I mean? I think some of these things are going to have value over time, just like some of the comics do.
Yeah, and I am part of that demographic you were talking about, because I collected GI Joe comics, but I was not aware of the cards. I really wasn't. That was not something that ever showed up on my radar growing up as a kid. But you know, I'm sure if I had known about them, I would have liked them, because I did collect other trading cards. You know, so it is interesting from that perspective that I do think people get into that stuff. And Orville Nation mentions that he was into Garbage Pail Kids. He says, I remember those. I feel like if you're a certain age, everybody had, because I remember trading Garbage Pail Kids on the bus. I traded Garbage Pail Kids with kids on the bus, you know? And then Lynn says, when I think of Wolverine, I touch my card. And he has a little music thing there.
Yeah.
And he mentions, you know, it takes up less space than comics, just as you said. You know, absolutely. That's absolutely the case.
And like I said, you can specialize too. If you have just that one character you like, you can collect just the cards of that one character. One of my rogue cards is actually signed by Andy Kubert, who actually did the art for the card. You know, so, and that's a fun thing too. A lot of people don't realize is that, you know, you could, you know, throw a whole bunch of cards in a binder. They're easier to transport around when you go to a convention to collect autographs and stuff too. It's a different way to be into the hobby. Like, for example, like, I think you have some people who are interested in the comics, but they find it daunting. And then they may learn about the cards and they love the movies and then be like, oh, well, here's a way I can kind of collect that sort of nostalgic, fun thing, right? But it's not quite the same, you know, sort of like daunting task as trying to get into the comics, you know? It's like, oh, well, there's been 10 Spider-Man cards over time. Okay, well, I'll get one of those Spider-Man cards I can get, you know? So
yeah, if you try to collect all the Spider-Man comics, that's insane. Jane mentions that she has 2 complete sets of the Smallville trading cards, you know? And actually, I did have some of the Star Wars cards. I think actually I might have inherited some of my brother's collection at one point too. My brother, I remember, had a lot of Star Wars trading cards. So there's all sorts of stuff out there. It's not necessarily just the Marvel cards or anything like that. Lynn also mentions card sleeves and card boxes are cheap. I've been taking the NFL cards I've wanted to keep out of my old binder sleeves and putting them sleeves and card boxes. Space is at a premium since he moved in. Nikki, I assume, is your wife or girlfriend. They moved in together. Gave a bunch of Chief cards to the owner of Area 51 ice cream and gave Jerry Lawler my Browns card. Only person I knew who would want them. That's interesting. gave Jerry Lawler your those cards, huh? That's a pretty interesting story. And then
The
Hollywood
King, Jerry
Jackson
Lawler.
says he collects. He says I have a get out of jail free card with a lawyer's number on the back. Different kind of card collecting right there, Hollywood. But everybody has their way, right? It's not just our way. Everybody collects their own kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And then Len also says that he has a complete set of Bushy Tails cards.
That's right. You guys did cards for Bushy Tails too, right?
We
That's
did trading
cool.
cards. And again, that's because of our love of cards, and we thought it would be an interesting thing to do. And I've actually got a binder that actually has a lot of the cards that I've actually worked on, like the actual trading cards. Maybe something we'll get into down the road. But no, I just thought it'd be something fun to talk about. Probably droned on about it too much, but I just wanted people to be aware of it, because this has only recently happened, and prior to this, these things are considered worthless. And I do think that they're going to have some value over time. So if you have them, start taking care of them. So
Lynn asks if he should get his Bushy Tails cards graded.
Well, here's a scary thing, Lynn. One of the things I'm thinking about doing is getting everything I've worked on graded. I have a small stack of the DC books and the Marvel books and stuff that I've worked on. I'm actually planning to send those actually to CGC. One of the most valuable books in my collection, ready for this, everybody, is a book I actually worked on. I talked about that on the show. I was shocked to learn that. There's a variant cover of a book I worked on that has actually quite a bit of value to it. I was a little stunned to realize that. And then a lot of my cards I am actually planning to actually have those cards graded. The Superman, the Legend cards, I'm going to have those graded. I love the Superboy card that I did, even though I know it's the new 52 version of Superboy. I thought that card turned out really nice. I'm going to have that one graded. I actually did a card actually for the character, the Black Terror, the Golden Age superhero. I did that for a Golden Age superhero line. I'm going to have that one actually graded as well. So I am planning to get some of my stuff graded, and I'm also intending to actually get all of my Bushy Tails cards graded. Lynn, if you and I get our Bushy Tails cards graded, we're going to have the most rare graded collectible comic book cards in the world, because there'll probably only be two. There'll be two of this card and two of that card.
Two graded cards. There you go.
That's right. We'll have the most rare cards ever. People will be like, "There's only two of these. They've got to be valuable." So, yeah, I'm planning on it. It's silly and stupid, but I do plan on doing it.